What's up, everyone? I'm Doug Kyed, joined as always by Michael Hurley on Pat's Chat. This is take 3. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. This is our third time trying. I think we're going to nail it. We're already off 30 seconds and running, so I'm feeling good. How are you?
I'm doing well. We got the Super Bowl on Sunday. Patriots have a new offensive line coach. We got lots of stuff to discuss. Ooh, we got the Super Bowl hat on your noggin there. I've got the
Big Super Bowl fan.
I've got the Super Bowl live right here for my daughter Olivia.
I've got LV for Las Vegas, the city. It's cool. For it was $3 on Fanatics, so that's why I got it. It's pretty sweet.
I've got a Super Bowl LVI helmet there too.
Nice. I think a lot of the LV memorabilia was cheap on Fanatics because only like 20,000 people could go to that Super Bowl, so there was some leftover merchandise.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. That was one of the few Super Bowls in the last few years that I've not been to, and I'm not going to be at this one either. But
yeah,
still excited for the game. Let's kick things off though, talking about the Patriots and talking about Mr. Adrian Klemm, because I guess it hasn't been formally announced by the Patriots yet at this point. Everyone's still basically just dealing off the one report from ESPN, correct? That Adrian Klemm is expected to join the Patriots coaching staff. And that runs contrary to what Dan Lanning said, that he wasn't expecting any changes to his staff. So there, Dan.
Sounds like some legalese at play with the contracts, I would guess, because I did see that for whatever reason, we know all of the details of Adrian Klemm's contract as associate head coach / run game coordinator / offensive line coach at Oregon, which I find odd.
He's a state employee?
Yeah, probably. Smarty pants. But it's something like a $225,000 buyout if he left before February 28th or something. So I'm sure there's some lawyers and contract writers dotting I's, crossing T's, doing all of that, because I am not familiar with $100,000 contracts personally, multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars at once. So I assume it takes a little bit of time.
So would that mean that he would have to pay that back, or that the Patriots would have to pay Oregon $225,000?
My guess.
I realize I'm asking you after you literally just said that you don't understand, but I'm still going to ask you.
It seems like he's going to get that from Oregon.
Oh, that's cool.
By leaving.
Good for him.
Maybe that's $225,000 the Patriots don't have to pay him as part of the reported pay raise.
That's fair.
But yeah, he was going to make a lot of money, $850,000. So this is my initial takeaway of this is it adds to a massive philosophy shift from Bill Belichick, where last year you had an offensive coordinator for all intents and purposes. You had an offensive line coach, and you had a quarterbacks coach where the dollar investment was next to zero. And this year you have Bill O'Brien, who we assume costs what? $3 million. You have Adrian Klemm, who we assume costs $1 million. Now, Will Lawing, I don't know how much more he's making than Nick Caley was making, but the point is the dollar amount invested in some critical positions has gone from zero to the millions, which is positive for the present and will only serve to make the 2022 season more mystifying, because they're important positions that cost money, and it will never make sense, and it makes less sense. But if you don't want to cry over spilt milk, the positive is going forward, they have a functional, experienced offensive coaching staff.
So I am not a big consumer of sports media. I produce sports media. So in my spare time, I don't consume a lot of sports media. So I don't know if people have specifically made this point yet, but I did write about this week on a Substack. I'll be writing for an actual website again soon. But I had not seen the point made that the two positions that the Patriots didn't really invest any money in coaching-wise last year were quarterback and offensive line. Patriots used a first-round pick on Mac Jones in 2021. He is a quarterback. The Patriots used a first-round pick on Cole Strange in 2022. He is an offensive lineman. And it just feels strange to have them coached 2 first-round picks, like your most important players on offense to develop, by people who had never coached those positions before. Like, obviously the point had been made that those guys hadn't coached positions before, but I just personally had not seen the point made that those were your last 2 first-round picks. You didn't use a first-round pick in 2020, and in 2019, you used a first-round pick on N'Keal Harry, and who was his position coach?
Joe Judge.
Joe Judge, who had never coached his position before either. So this will be the first year, and I guess that's a backwards way of looking at it, but yeah, like, quite honestly, the Patriots have not done a great job putting their first-round offensive players in positions to succeed coaching-wise, and that should now change this year, and you have to hope that Mac Jones and Cole Strange aren't permanently broken from what happened last year, the way that N'Keal Harry was. I'm not blaming Joe Judge for like all of N'Keal Harry's misfortunes or anything like that, but like, I couldn't have helped. I don't know, you know?
Yeah, no, you're right. I think for as much as we all focus on the quarterback, because we are quarterback obsessed, cornerback a horny nation, I always say we are horny for quarterbacks. I think I held off a lot of judgment on Cole Strange for that very reason, because how much coaching is he getting? And he's a guy, it's not as if he was coming from Alabama or a major big time program. He's coming from the University of Tennessee at Chattanooga, playing against guys like he had to block Doug Kyed one game, and then he had to block Mike Hurley the next. So he needed more coaching. He didn't get it, obviously. So I think that is significant for his standpoint to get a real coach, an experienced coach. By all means, someone who's had a lot of jobs. I don't know how long-term of a signing it is, but they needed someone immediately. So it's certainly a positive there, because I think the Mac Jones thing we'll get to, because we always do. But I wouldn't lose track of that, because you're right. If you're going to draft a guard in the first round from a small school, you should have a coach for him. You should have a position coach for him who's ready to work with him every single day. And you
right, and like maybe Billy Yates was doing some of that, but like Matt Patricia not only was a guy who hadn't coached offensive line beyond like one season in the 2010s or whatever it was, or 2000s, but also was like moonlighting as an offensive play caller. So it's not only as if you weren't giving Cole Strange an experienced position coach, you were giving him a distracted position coach as well in Matt Patricia. So I don't know. I mean, we could probably talk about Cole Strange until the cows come home.
Could we? I mean, I think I've reached my max.
Well,
I'm out of Cole Strange content.
Can we mention the fact that he was a first-round pick? You like sort of wasted a year with him, with Matt Patricia as your offensive line coach, and he's gonna be 25 already this season. Like, I feel like that point kind of can't be lost. Like, I think that when you draft a 24-year-old guard out of Chattanooga, like, especially at that age, like, you kind of expect him to be gangbusters right away. I guess ideally he becomes Kyle Duggar, but a little bit better, because he's like Kyle Duggar was another highly picked old prospect out of a small school, and it's wound up working out fine. But I also think that you probably would have wanted to get a little bit more out of Kyle Duggar the first 2 years of his career. I don't know.
I want to say this for our podcast listeners, because I checked before you mentioned Kyle Duggar, because I knew he was an older pick. He's turning 27 next month. 3 years into his career, he's turning 27 in March. That's
not young.
It's not young. I mean, he's got 3 years of prime left, and then maybe 3 years of mid to post prime. But that's you're right. No, a wasted
the crazy
year
thing about that too is that
let me push back.
I
want
to
say something nice. I wouldn't necessarily say a wasted year, because Cole Strange did take something like 90% of the offensive snaps at a position that, while it isn't a premium position, you need human beings there, and he filled it for 90% of the season. So they got decent play out of him, and I think the fact that he was decent given that scenario does bode well for how he can do in a real system with real coaches.
Yeah, wasted is tough to say. I mean, like, things just seemed so bad on the offensive line, and like, you changed systems on your offensive line too. Like, you went from using like words to numbers, and now I don't know what they're going to do this year. So it was a year where he probably should have been able to develop more. And I actually do think that he bounced back pretty well over the last quarter of the season. But I also feel like it can't be lost that in what, 1 or 2 straight games he got benched also. The Jets game and the Colts game, which, like, yeah, that happens to rookies, but it's a tougher pill to swallow when you're taking the 24-year-old out of Chattanooga that everyone expected to go in the 3rd round and wound up going in the 1st round. And, like, if he had been benched as a 3rd rounder, though, I don't know. It's belaboring the point. Like, he's going to be better this season. He's going to have a real offensive line coach. I'm kind of surprised that the Patriots looked at Adrian Klemm and said he's worth $1 million or whatever they are going to pay him. Because, like, 1 year of experience coaching the offensive line in the NFL. He's been an offensive line coach since what, like 2009 or something at this point?
Been a long time. He was obviously drafted 23 years ago, so he's experienced in the position of offensive line.
He's been at UCLA. He's been at Oregon. I forget where else he's coached. But, like, is that a little bit surprising to you? Where, like...
Yeah, because this is not an organization known for high contracts to assistants that haven't been around forever, and throw Gerard Mayo into the mix too, with the amount of money being poured into the coaching staff. You know, it was reported last year at some point that Bill Belichick's salary is $25 million, and we know that there was a lot of money saved last year, so maybe it's doubled up this year. But whatever it may be, I don't know if it comes out of Bill Belichick. I would doubt it would come out of his salary. What kind of contract would that be? But there's clearly it was clearly laid bare that a budget coaching staff gets you a budget football team. And I think the result was a wasted year. It really was a wasted year because your defense was very good. Your defense would have been better if it didn't have to be on the field as much as it was, because your offense never possessed the ball. I think they ranked, 27th in time of possession. So it was all connected, and it cost them wins, and it cost them a playoff spot, and it cost them money as an organization for that reason. So I think it's sort of what we all expected to happen. And I think that's the worst part is nobody didn't see this coming, or to put in a non-double negative, everybody saw it coming except for the man in charge. So it's again, I'm like the crying over spilt milk guy. I don't want to make a huge deal over that, but I do, just to mention, we talked about Cole Strange getting a raw deal. This is where my dumb brain goes. You know who got the rawest deal of it all? Bill Murray. They were like, "Hey, Bill Murray, you're an offensive lineman now. Give it a whirl." And he was like, "All right, what do I do?" And they were like,
"I don't
know. You have TikTok? There's a lot of good stuff on it. Check that out. Come back tomorrow." So poor Bill Murray had no chance to succeed as an offensive lineman.
Yeah, that's tough. To be an offensive lineman who's being coached by a defensive line coach when he used to be a defensive lineman, it's just a confusing situation all along there. Adrian Klemm, though, I was looking up his resume, also known as Wikipedia. And yeah, he's been an offensive line coach since 2009, but only 3 of those seasons came in the NFL. And it's kind of a weird resume because he went from SMU to UCLA. And by the end of his time at UCLA, he was associate head coach, run game coordinator, and offensive line coach. That's a lot of titles. And then he goes to the Steelers to become... then he took 2 years off and then goes to the Steelers as assistant line coach. So I don't know what happened in those 2 years. I guess that's, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
Maybe he had to find himself.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I guess that explains why he went from being all those things to an assistant offensive line coach after 2 years off. I don't know. It's just like I think this is going to go well, but this isn't like you're like, all right, I'm going to pay $1 million to get a clone of Dante Scarnecchia. Like, you're paying $1 million for someone who's only been an offensive line coach, not an assistant offensive line coach, in the NFL for 1 season. And it was like kind of a weird year for the Steelers where Ben Roethlisberger was like dropping back and immediately throwing the ball because he didn't want to get hit, and they still got sacked a decent amount. I don't know. It was just a weird year.
And he left the team in December with 2 games left, and they went on to make the playoffs. So certainly weird. But I did see, I don't have the numbers for me, but I know that there was a massive turnaround at Oregon year to year. So even if it is a short-term coaching investment, the fact that he had that instant success at Oregon from the year before he came to the year he was there in sacks and rushing, I think maybe makes him an ideal candidate for what they need, because they need a lot. They need to get Trent Brown invested. They need a right tackle, whether that's Isaiah Wynn, whether that's Trent Brown, then they need a left tackle. So it's not done. I wouldn't say it's done, but this is certainly sort of the foundation from which they can build upon. And when you go cheap one year and it hurts, you end up overpaying the next year. I think that's the case. I mean, we saw that in the roster building in 2019 to 2020 after a bad roster where Damiere Byrd is your number one receiver. Like, what the hell? And your tight end group is the 2019 tight ends group. They had the rookies, and was Lacoste still around?
You're talking about 2020. When they drafted. You're talking about 2020, not 2019.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. 2020. They had the third rounder from Virginia Tech, who was
Dalton Keene, Devin Asiasi, Matt Lacoste.
Maybe Lacoste.
That might have been the year that Eric Tomlinson got involved, but that might have been 2019.
Either way,
also, yeah.
You had that, then you overpay for two tight ends the next year. Right. You had Damiere Byrd and Jacoby Myers as your top receivers, and then you pay for Aguilar and Bourne. So this is sort of a repeat. I think what I'm getting at, Doug, is where is the planning? This used to be a team that was always 10 steps ahead of the game, that always prepared and had backup plans for backup plans for backup plans. Yeah. And it's just a constant state of reacting to
being 1 year late
issues
to everything. Yeah, quarterback they were a year late.
Tight ends receiver, they were 3 years late.
Tight ends they were insanely late. I don't know why they never drafted a tight end.
Offensive coaches.
Rob Gronkowski was going to play forever and never get injured, even though he retired at 30 and got injured. So just
the landmark characteristic of the organization is no more. So we're turning a positive into a negative. But how can you not notice that it's just a repeat of what they did with the roster a few years ago and what they did? I mean, I would say using a 15th overall pick on a quarterback when you're 2 years after the fact of really 3 years, because it was the summer of 2019 when they didn't sign Tom Brady long term, and that's when the clock should have begun, and it took a year and a half, 2 years to do it. I don't know, Doug. I don't know why that's the case, but it's harmful to the overall health of the team.
I'm going to tell you one other person who got a raw deal. And this is not a player who gets a lot of sympathy from Patriots fans.
Okay.
Not one of the least popular players on the Patriots
Isaiah
last
Wynn.
year, I would say. It is Isaiah Wynn.
Yeah.
The Patriots took Isaiah Wynn from left tackle, a position that he had been playing on the team for 3 years.
He was okay.
Told him, pretty good. It
was okay.
He was an above average NFL left tackle, which
I would
is
say top 16 of top 16.
He might have been 16. He might have been complete, but agreed. It's better than that's fine. It's in my opinion, using the 23rd overall pick on the 16th best left tackle in the NFL, not the worst investment.
They won Super Bowls when Matt Light was the 13th best left tackle in the NFL. So you can do it.
So what do they do with Isaiah Wynn? With poor Isaiah Wynn, they tell him, "Hey, you've played left tackle your entire career. In college, you played left guard. We're going to move you to right tackle for no reason. Even though Trent Brown is a proven right tackle in the NFL, you're a proven left tackle in the NFL. And not only are you going to move to right tackle, you're not going to have an offensive line coach." And then, obviously it didn't help that he didn't play well and that he got injured. But, you could say that maybe he didn't play well because he was playing a new position and being coached by Matt Patricia. But, to do that to him after not picking up his fifth-year option, right? Yeah, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option.
Yes, correct.
Wait, no, they did.
No, they didn't.
They did.
Oh, yeah.
He played on.
He was 20 Michelle. He was 20.
Yeah. So they picked up his fifth-year option. So now he's going into free agency, and you're saying, all right, but now you're a bad right tackle, whereas previously you were the 16th best left tackle in the NFL. That's just he's the pay cut that he's going to take from going from there. It's just brutal. I don't know. I'm talking
right.
too much about it, but it was.
I'm not going to argue with you. Not going to argue with you. You're right.
I'm sure that some people will. Let's talk a little bit about Mac Jones, because I feel like there's, beyond Adrian Klemm, who we managed to talk about for 20 minutes, there's not a whole lot going on in the NFL right now. But so those, what was it? The fifth-year options came out for players who were drafted in 2020. So we saw the figures that Joe Burrow would, all these other guys would make. And I think that kind of kickstarted the conversation of do you really want to give a fifth-year option of $30 million or whatever it is to Mac Jones next year because that's what it's going to cost you. I don't think it's really fair to be having that conversation yet, but I think it's kind of being forced on people because there's not that much else going on. So we're having to have this conversation like 2 years too early now at this point, whatever it is. And I don't know, like, yeah, right now I probably wouldn't give Mac Jones $30 million or whatever, but we also don't know how he's going to play next year. I don't know though. It's a tough situation with Mac Jones because like Derek Carr is off on a visit with the New Orleans Saints or whatever. Jimmy Garoppolo is going to be a free agent. I think there are cases to be made that the Patriots would have a higher floor if they did make a move for someone like Derek Carr or made a move for someone like Jimmy Garoppolo. But obviously the upside is there with Mac Jones still. But I don't know, like it's a weird offseason for Mac Jones just because he took such a massive step back last season.
Yeah. Did we talk about this? I wrote in January. I kind of looked ahead to this because I'm way ahead of the game, unlike the Patriots. I am thinking ahead, and I looked at quarterbacks who had their fifth-year option picked up because to me, I always look at like I probably brought it up before. I always look at Baker Mayfield.
Yeah.
Number 1 overall pick, correct? Am I right about that?
Correct.
Taken at the top of the first round.
Yeah.
Entered a situation, head coach gets fired a year and a half in, the offensive coordinator changes his first 3 years. He didn't get his fifth-year option picked up. And I feel like he's no, he got traded.
True.
Yeah, he didn't get a second deal or a fifth-year option. He played 4 years in Cleveland, if I'm not mistaken.
But then he did, and then he had to take a pay cut to get traded to Cleveland.
Traded to Carolina?
I mean, yeah, he got traded. He had the fifth-year option picked up, and then he was traded to Carolina, but he had to take a pay cut off that fifth-year option for Carolina to trade for him.
Oh, yeah. Got it.
Yes.
Got it. The point is he was considered trash by the team that drafted him.
Right.
And then he gets traded again. I just think there's so much, like, he's now 5 years into his career, and we still don't know if he's good or not. I think we have feelings that he's not, but there are reasonable variables that have made him not as good as he potentially could be. So that's where I'm looking at Mac after 2 years. Now, let's say he has a stable Bill O'Brien-led system for the next 2 years. We will have a good idea. We will have a better idea. Right. So to your point, it is kind of a waste of time to do the exercise now because you said it was a wasted year for Cole Strange, and I pushed back, but I get it because it was kind of a wasted year for everyone evaluation-wise. It's hard. I even like Tyquan Thornton. All these guys, I'm not going to sit here and try to make long-term assessments based off a year where everything was a mess. And now stabilization has come. And if that continues for the next 2 years, then we can have conversations about these guys. I know that's not very sports media conducive, but you kind of have to be reasonable about it.
I'm going to come out with a fiery hot take. I will say right now, what is it, February 9th, 7:40 p.m., the Patriots should not pick up Mac Jones' fifth-year option next year. I think it's a bad idea for a team to pick up the fifth-year option of a quarterback, honestly, just in general. Because either you are confident enough in that quarterback to give him a 6-year contract extension worth $400 million or whatever it is, or you are fine taking a slight risk that he is going to exceed expectations in the year, in that fourth year. And if he does, and if he's fantastic, and if you want to keep him around, then you just slap that franchise tag on him. And it's not that much more money. It's like $5 million more dollars. So like either you are going to give a quarterback that you clearly don't believe in enough to give him a contract extension, money that is fully guaranteed. Like you cannot get out of that contract anymore at this point. So I don't know. I just think that like fifth-year options for quarterbacks, if you even put yourself in that position, is a bad idea. So
good point. Because Doug, there's a real concrete example in Daniel Jones.
Yes.
The Giants said, "Nah, this guy sucks." Probably.
Yeah.
And then he had a good year, not a great year.
Right.
But I decline that option would have paid him $23 million next year.
Yeah.
Is Daniel Jones after that very good year going to get more than $23 million next year?
Like if he gets a franchise tag, I think a transition
like 30,
tag is going to be like
32.
28 million or something. It's like, yeah, just put the transition tag on him and it costs you $5 million more. And honestly, it's a good thing because he was good. Yeah. And now you've got a quarterback that you believe in. It's like, yeah, I'll pay $5 million for that.
Lamar Jackson as I don't know if he's like I really don't know what to make of Lamar Jackson.
Well, he's the unicorn in this situation.
He is, but after everything that just happened, who knows what happens with his contract. So it speaks to, I don't know, maybe we shouldn't use him, but he was a first-round quarterback.
But you don't want to get stuck with the Baker Mayfield fifth-year option. You don't want to get stuck with the Sam Darnold fifth-year option. Like, if you do not believe in this player, then you can't pick up the fifth-year option. And if you do believe in him, you should give him a contract extension. It's like literally that simple. The Bengals and the Chargers don't need to make decisions on a fifth-year option for Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert because they should be signing them to massive contract extensions. So and with Tua,
well, it's a piece of leverage. It's a piece of leverage at least when the negotiations do happen.
Right. And I mean with Tua, I don't think you should give him the fifth-year option because I don't know if you can fully believe in it at this point. And like I said, if it works out, great. And give him the franchise tag or the transition tag, and you're in better shape anyway. So, I don't know. That's my opinion. We just talked about something that I said didn't matter for like 6 minutes. But
that's what we do.
I believe you had other opinions on Mac Jones as well, or another thing to talk about with Mac Jones.
Well, I just feel like when they brought in Bill O'Brien and when they brought in Adrian Klemm and there was just this sort of like, well, now Mac has no excuses. And it's like, is that how your brain works? It's just so weird that people like us that I think were rational about what was going on and realistic were kind of made out to be sort of defenders of Mac. And like, that's not, I've been up front. Mac Jones doesn't excite me as a football player yet. It possibly could happen. It possibly could not. He could be Sam Darnold. He could be Baker Mayfield. He could be better than that. Yeah. I tend to think he's got a higher ceiling than those guys because of his accuracy. I think he's sort of looked at as a guy who only succeeded because of his talent in Alabama, and the talent at Alabama was undeniable. Don't get me wrong, but he set a NCAA record for accuracy. He completed like 70% of his passes that year, which to me translates. There's some passes he makes that are very high level. And there are plays that he makes that are very high level. And he gets knocked for not being mobile and maybe not having the strongest arm in the world. But I just think there's this sort of toxicity in the Mac Jones conversation that so many people are coming from so many different angles that I don't know, it gets ugly and messy. It's not quite the Cam conversations that we discussed the other day, but I don't know. There's something charged in there with whenever you talk Mac Jones. And I just think, rather than see all these coaching moves and say, well, now Mac's got no excuse, you could say, well, now we can fairly assess Mac. Right. Maybe he'll be good. Maybe he will struggle. But now we can fairly look at him in an NFL real situation because last year wasn't it.
I think that this is 100% going to be like, you are going to know what you have in Mac Jones after this season because and he needs to play better. He needs to play probably even better than he was as a rookie. Because I would say that, definitely, based on the lack of mobility, based on maybe the lack of arm strength, like there's a lower ceiling with Mac Jones. So like if after year 3, he's not a top 15 quarterback or a top, whatever it is, top 10 quarterback, like chances are he's not going to become one. Like that's not just going to like all of a sudden click in like year 6 or 7 or whatever it is, just because like he probably doesn't have the tools to eventually become that, and he doesn't have the high upside to become that. So yeah, I think that we're going to have a very good idea of what Mac Jones is, even probably within like the first 4 or 5 weeks of the 2023 season. And that's another point as to why like the whole 5th-year option thing, we don't know yet. But if he does take a gigantic step forward, then yeah, the Patriots should be trying to extend him anyway.
Right. Fair point. And you remember you were at training camp when he was a rookie, and he was outperforming Cam Newton. He was throwing touchdowns in the red zone. He was running the offense like he knew what he was doing. So I think people just forget that. I do think his rookie season, even though it was one of the better rookie seasons in NFL history, I guess, as a quarterback, I do think that was overstated. I never felt he was really exceptional throughout that year, but he was capable as a rookie, which is a rare thing. And I just think there's got to be anyone that maybe hates him now or is disgusted by him now should at least be open to the possibility of him picking up where he left off 2 years ago. That's all. That was my thought on that.
Definitely. Let's talk one or two other Patriots things in here. Matthew Slater was on like a weird, like, oh, my computer's shifting down. Matthew Slater was on like
pastors.
a religious podcast or something like that.
Pastor chat.
You know what? I'm gonna be honest. I don't listen to Pastor Chat. But it was interesting that he was basically like, yeah, I'd take a coaching job with the Patriots. And like just like flat out and honest about it. And given the way that the Patriots are just like handing out jobs to former Patriots players at this point, I think that Bill Belichick would probably like give it to him. Like he could probably have one.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think if he's willing to work at Foxborough Stadium, at Gillette Stadium in Foxborough, you'd let him do it as long as he wants.
Right.
I would name a wing of the building after him and let him do whatever he wants. Have him like have an after school program for the players after practice. I don't know. Like he's a guy you want around, and I think that's the point. And I think that's the fact that some guys want to retire and step away and disappear for a few years and then maybe reemerge later. If he wants to step into that, we talked about it on this podcast. If he wants to be a strength and conditioning, just to be in the gym, getting people jacked up, getting people working the way that he knows is a championship level, it's a good thing. I mean, I don't know. Does the post game celebration? Oh yeah, carry on without him, or does he need to be there on the staff? I don't know.
I think he needs to be there on the staff.
Been doing it forever.
He has since
Bruschi retired. I would guess
2009. I think 2010.
Is that when Bruschi retired?
I think it was around then. Yeah, Slater.
Maybe there was a gap.
08. Yeah.
Maybe he wasn't doing it as a second-year player, but someone had to pick up the slack. That is a lot to ask, to say who likes winning football games. Oh, yeah, but people
what
got to
if Matthew
believe.
Slater, after like barely playing any offensive or defensive snaps throughout his NFL career, just became like the best wide receiver coach in the NFL, or like the best safeties coach in the NFL?
It wouldn't shock me. I mean, Bill Belichick was a mediocre guard at Wesleyan or center, and he's a pretty good football coach. I don't think coaching is a skill, just like Antonio Brown would make a lousy wide receivers coach. He's one of the best receivers
come on, that's
in my life. I'm sorry, it's the truth. Ted Williams was a lousy baseball coach. He was the best hitter that ever lived. Tom Brady would make a crappy coach too, because he'd look at someone and be like, why can't you just do it? I don't understand what we're doing here. So I think someone like Slater, who understands everything that goes into everything, would be a damn good coach. So I think that would be a positive for the Patriots if he came on as a coaching assistant and was still around the team. So I think that's a positive for the team as well. There's no negative spin on this one either. So suck on that. True.
Fine, I will. Tom Brady. This wasn't in our notes, but I just thought of it. First of all, what do we think about Tom Brady saying he's going to take a year off before starting to work for Fox? That's
ownership.
To me, that sets off some red flags.
Yeah.
But then, and like one of those red flags is, okay, is this guy like really retired, or is he like? But I don't think you can ask Bill Belichick to be on your retirement podcast if you don't really retire.
He can do whatever he wants. No, but you're right, because remember Jay Cutler went into broadcasting, right? And then it was August, and Tannehill broke his shoulder or something.
Right.
And the Dolphins were like, Jay Cutler, you want to play quarterback? And he was like, yeah, I guess so. So that was the end of Jay Cutler's broadcast career. So there is an element that, and Brady didn't even close the door. He wasn't even like being wishy-washy. He was just, I think, being honest, a rare moment for him. You listen to that podcast, by the way, it's like, hey, Tom, here's a question. And Tom answers like sincerely and is like very emotional. It's like, that question brought to you by Macy's, American Express, ExxonMobil, Pepsi Cola, and Frosted Flakes. Tom eats them all. It's a tough listen, not going to lie.
He eats Macy's?
He eats Macy's. I don't know. He once went on the radio.
That's a weird part of the Guerrero diet.
He was on the radio once and was getting pushback on the Guerrero thing and said like Frosted Flakes, people think it's food and it's not, and people drink soda, and it's like, he's right, but I mean, can't change the country's eating habits in one radio interview. But the point is, I lost the point, but I think Brady was kind of open. Like, I don't know that I will want to be retired forever. And We'll see, but
I don't understand why the man retired. I don't understand it. I don't get it.
No, I don't think he does. I don't think he does.
He
didn't seem like he had clarity.
I know.
Or peace.
So why is he doing this? Like, if he was able to fly to New York and watch his son's football games or whatever, like, I know that he's like, I don't know, it's tough to say. He's like clearly not getting enough time with his kids and everything like that. So like maybe that's why he wants to do it. But I don't know. Like, he can still play, and for him to take this year off, it's just a little weird. But good for Greg Olsen, I guess. Your favorite announcer, Greg Olsen. He gets to be the number one. Poor
Greg. Oh, poor Greg Olsen. Oh my God, he's gonna lose his job through no fault. It's like Alex Smith. You know what it's like? It's like when Alex Smith lost a job to Colin Kaepernick, who was one of the most dynamic players at the position we had ever seen at the time. Where Alex Smith was the most basic B of all time, and everyone's like, "Oh, you can't lose your job to injury." It's like, no, he lost his job by being mediocre for 4 years prior to Kaepernick showing up and lighting the world on fire. So it's the same thing to me. Greg Olsen, fine. He's fine. I'm not going to cry for him if he goes to the number 2 job on Fox. It's just it's just truly not a tragedy unless Tom Brady stinks, which I suppose is a possibility.
Alex Smith, weird career. He was awful for the first like 4 years, something like that in San Francisco. And then like was a pretty good quarterback pretty much out of nowhere for both the 49ers and the Chiefs. Yeah. Lost his job to
people forget
icons.
Patrick Mahomes sat behind Alex Smith. That is incredible. Never forget also, Doug, week 1 of 2015, Alex Smith threw for about 8 million yards at Gillette Stadium on the Thursday night season opener. I still can't believe it. That was when what's his face, the running back, made his debut out of Akron. No.
Kareem Hunt?
Yes. Where did he go to college?
Probably Akron.
Somewhere small. Somewhere small.
I think it was Akron.
Somewhere in the MAC. He was a MAC guy. Yeah, I'd never heard of him before that night. He had like 700 receiving yards.
I thought the Patriots were going to draft him that entire offseason. And I guess in some ways it's good that they didn't. I'm
going to get his college, Doug. I'm going to get it.
I think it was Akron, but you might be...
Kareem Hunt. Oops.
We're just going to leave dead air. Completely
dead
air.
It was the 2017 season. You'll have to forgive me on that. Not 2015. They win so many Super Bowls. He went to Toledo.
God damn it. It wasn't Akron.
Same thing.
Let's talk about the Super Bowl a little bit. We'll wait until maybe towards the end to talk about like the actual game and everything like that. But there's a lot going on Super Bowl week. And I think that that's kind of a good place to start. You put in these here notes, do you have Super Bowl Media Week FOMO? And that's a fair question to ask because I go to a lot of Super Bowls, as I mentioned before.
We get it, Doug. We get it.
Well, but this year I'm not. So I've got all the programs behind me if the games have been. But so I went to 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019.
He's listing the Super Bowls again. He's listing the Super Bowls. Oh my God, he's doing it again.
And now I'm not at 2022 because
it's true.
I got laid off and I'm going to have a new job soon, but it wasn't in time to go to like the Senior Bowl, the Super Bowl, the Combine, all those different things. So do I have Super Bowl Media Week FOMO? I did as people were tweeting that they were arriving. I was like, that would be cool to be there. But I hope that like no one who makes monetary decisions in the future for me going to the Super Bowl is listening to this. And if they are, turn off or just
rate and subscribe. Rate and subscribe, write a review, and just kind of zone out for the next minute while you write that review.
And just know that I would come prepared with content that matters, that is worth sending me to the Super Bowl for. But like, as I'm just paying attention, like I'm not like constantly on Twitter. I have tweet notifications sent to my phone. I'm not on YouTube checking out every single piece of Super Bowl week content. But I would say that like none of it really matters. Honestly, like almost anything that happens at Radio Row doesn't really matter. I haven't seen any like particularly explosive quotes. And I know that like if I was there, I would feel like everything that I was doing mattered to the nth degree. But like it does, this not being there, it does kind of allow you to step back and be like, God, a lot of what's happening really doesn't matter. And there's some companies that send so many people to the Super Bowl and get like almost zero content out of it the entire week. And those are the ones that I'm like really wondering about. It's like, why would you send like 15 people to the Super Bowl if no one's going to really do anything? It's a weird thing.
Yeah. I don't have FOMO this year, and it's because watching like I watched or I listened to some Zolak and Bertrand today, and they had some good guests. Malcolm Butler was on. So I've been enjoying the radio content, but just seeing it in the background, it's identical every year. Yes. That I'm not saying I don't ever want to go again. Right. I'd love to go a bunch more times. Yeah. But seeing it all in the Radio Row, and I know what the media workroom situation is, and I know what sitting in that room for 8 hours of my life every day. I experienced it a good amount. I relished it. I worked as hard as I could. To your point, everything there is the most important thing in the world when you're covering it and you're working sun up to sundown and beyond. But seeing it now, I'm like, I've literally done that. So it's I don't need. It's like when you ride a roller coaster 6 times and you see people riding it. You're like, I don't really need to ride it right now for the 7th time. I'll ride it in a couple years, hopefully. So that's how I feel on it, because it's like Groundhog Day when you see all the banners set up in Radio Row, all the Super Bowl banners, all the tables. The only one that was different, I guess, was the mall, but it was in a freaking mall, so it kind of sucked. So I'm okay with taking a little gap.
Do you know what did it for me? I was at the gym, not a big deal. I'm going on vacation next week.
Curls? What are we doing? Chest? Tries? Back?
I might have just been like walking on a treadmill because I had done some lifting.
I would have said something different. Yeah. Okay.
I had done some lifting. Actually, I don't know. I might have been doing some bench press with dumbbells, but at the gym that I go to, they had NBC Sports Boston on, and poor Felger and Hawley are doing their BST at night in a completely empty Radio Row. And like,
I've done that.
Oh, it's just the worst. Like when it like sort of sucks when everyone's around, but it sucks so much worse if you are like one of the 10 last people at Radio Row, in just a way that like you can't fully explain, because it is just this like hustle and bustle place. But if you have to be working, and like the Atlanta Super Bowl, I had to do TV every night there. So like every night at like 7 o'clock or 8 o'clock or 10 o'clock, whatever it was, like I had to be at Radio Row when no one else was there and everyone else was like eating dinner or having fun or whatever it is, and you're just like in this completely empty Radio Row. So like that's what really got me and did it for me, where I was like, you know what, like being here at the gym or whatever like might be better than being on Radio Row completely alone right now.
In Houston, I did the show with Felger and Tanguay at 10 o'clock at night. And as we mentioned, Houston, my hotel was 9,000 miles from the convention center. So I had to drive in, and that convention center was like 4 city blocks. And so I went in one door and I have to walk like 9 miles, and I was like dead tired and I just wanted a coffee. And like there was no coffee within 5 blocks, and I'm like, there was a Starbucks or something in the building. And so I walked 8 miles to get there and it was closed, and I was just like, oh. So it was one of those situations where once the PM drive shows East Coast shut down around 6 p.m. Eastern, 5 Central, 4 Mountain. Yeah. I wasn't there in LA, but I'm sure it was 3. It just really dies down and empties out. And it is kind of a sad. You know what the saddest time is like if you're there on Saturday before the game. Right, because all the radio guys are gone. Like it's just picked over. It looks like you're looking for vultures just sitting to pick at carcasses, which there's probably like leftover pizza boxes and stuff.
Have you been there on?
It's an unhealthy state.
Have you been there on a Monday?
Maybe. I don't think so though.
Monday, you feel like you're in like a zombie movie by Monday, because you're so tired by the end of the week, and like for some reason you have to go to Radio Row or like the media center or whatever it is, and it's just like. Yeah, it's more desolate than you can ever possibly imagine. I'm trying to think of whether to tell a story. Have I told you the story about how I knocked over an entire wall at Radio Row once?
Not sure. I don't think so.
It was in Atlanta. I had like just met a few reporters the day before. They were like some cool reporters, whatever. And I was rushing to get to the Ness and Radio Row spot at the Atlanta Super Bowl. And at the Atlanta Super Bowl, at Radio Row, like the wall, like that you have to get through, like there's doors, but it didn't really show like where the doors were, and there was Velcro on the doors as well. So like, and I think they pulled outward, they didn't pull like forward. So
this is
I was
like a 25-foot wall and like separating conference room type thing.
Yeah,
right?
it's like 25 by like 50 by 25, and like the walls are all like waist high. So I'm like rushing to get to where I'm going. I'm probably like wearing a suit, or I'm like trying to put my suit on. I'm like trying to get this live shot done, and like I think I must have pushed like very hard on what I thought was a door, and instead I just like toppled over the wall, and the entire wall fell down around me, and I had like people like rushing over to see like if I was okay. Cool reporter friends I had met the day before were walking by at that very moment that I had collapsed the entire wall at Radio Row. And like I guess it wouldn't like, it might not be like the most embarrassing moment of my life, but like that's usually like if you see someone being like, what was the most embarrassing thing that's ever happened to you? Like that's like one of the first things that comes to mind for me. Yeah.
You almost did a murder is what you're saying.
Yes.
Did it fall where you're in the doorway and it just falls everywhere, but you're just like perfectly fit through the opening and live?
No, I fell over too. I collapsed with the entire wall, and I guess I'm lucky that like it wasn't a domino effect where like every single like wall at Radio Row fell over.
Mass
like,
casualties and you're to blame. That would be tough. That would be difficult.
But yeah, that was fun. But also Super Bowl week, Roger Goodell talked, and we like.
Did he?
We don't need to talk that long about Roger Goodell. But I saw that you wrote about Roger Goodell and his bizarre press conference today. And I don't know. I've got the clip loaded in here of
Run the clip.
Roger Goodell's like okay, so Jim Trotter, who's a black NFL reporter or NFL media reporter, asked Roger Goodell a question, and Roger Goodell is going to answer the question. I feel like we can't fully talk about this unless you hear the full clip, but it is 2 minutes and 22 seconds. So if you've already heard it, you could skip forward 2 minutes and 22 seconds, but we're going to talk about it. So if you haven't heard it, you probably should listen to it.
Hey, Roger. Jim Trotter, NFL Media. You and other league officials have said that the league's commitment to diversity, equity, and inclusion extend beyond the sidelines and beyond the front offices, and is applied to all aspects of the company. I've worked in NFL media for 5 years. During those 5 years, we have never had a black person in senior management in our newsroom. That's a problem because we cover a league who, according to league data, the player population is 60 to 70% black, which means that there is no one who looks like these players at the table when decisions are being made about how they are covered. More concerning is that for a year plus now, we have never had a full-time black employee on the news desk, which again is a problem because we cover a league whose player population is 60 to 70% black according to league data. I asked you about these things last year, and what you told me is that the league had fallen short and you were going to review all of your policies and practices to try and improve this. And yet a year later, nothing has changed. You know, James Baldwin once said that I can't believe what you say because I see what you do. And so I would ask you as an employee, when are we in the newsroom going to have a black person in senior management, and when will we have a full-time black employee on the news desk?
Well, Jim, I am not in charge of the newsroom, so I think can I answer your question? As you point out, it's the same question you asked last year. And we did go back, and we have reviewed everything we've been doing across the league. And we are looking at everything from vendors that we're working with, to partners that we're working with, to ownership where we've seen significant changes in diversity just this year. And I'm not do not know specifically about the media business. We'll check in again with our people, but I am comfortable that we made significant progress across the league. I can't answer the specific questions. Some of the data you may have raised there may be accurate, maybe not. Last year, I was told some of it wasn't. We'll get to you on that. We want to make progress across the board, and that includes in the media room. And so those are things that we'll continue to look at and hopefully make real progress to. I can't answer because I do not know specifically what those numbers are today.
Doug.
Yes.
First answer. The first response is, I'm not in charge of the newsroom. Just absolving himself from any and all responsibility, despite being in charge of the league, despite actually having say. It's not as if this is ownership decisions on head coaches and whatnot. This is the NFL media. First is that. Second is just nonsense filibuster.
Well, you forget that
we do this.
He like interrupted Jim Trotter trying to like do a follow-up on Roger Goodell saying that he's not in charge of the media and being like pretty rude about it.
Being like, shut up. Hey, shut the hell up, okay? I let you talk. So that's that. Second was not, we look at vendors and everything. Shut up, just filling time.
Yeah.
Third is, you asked this question last year, and I've been told some of your data was wrong. And I went back and watched his question last year. Jim Trotter's question last year was actually longer, and it said 13 teams in the NFL have had either 1 or 0. No, sorry, 24 teams in the NFL have had either 1 or 0 black head coach, and 13 teams have had 0 black head coaches. Then he said there's been 1 black team president. He mentioned the number of 0 majority owners who are black. And if the data was, if they're quibbling on interim titles or whatever, it's the larger point is still true. And if you believe that the league needs to work on diversity, inclusion, and equity, then you hear this question, you say, absolutely, we need to be better. But instead, it's this defensive attack on the question.
Yeah.
And if you believe in the ethos of the question and the question asker, you don't respond that way. And Roger Goodell does not believe in any of that. And his instinct was to attack. And I just think it's such an easy thing to handle. It's the one difficult question this man faced in this farce of a press conference. And he absolutely fell in his face. Now, you hear my response to that? I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. But nothing's going to happen to Roger Goodell ever. But that's my response.
I feel like if that question at like a normal business, if that question had been posed at like a meeting, like because that's like Jim Trotter is an employee of Roger Goodell. Like Roger Goodell is the commissioner of the NFL, and Jim Trotter is an NFL employee. Like if that question had been made at a normal business meeting, and if the answer to that question, which is a sensitive question, had been that contentious, I feel like there might not be like an uprising among employees, but there would be a lot more questions for that boss to face after that meeting. And I'm just shocked that no one is talking about this answer that Roger Goodell gave to Jim Trotter. And we never talk about politics or anything on this podcast, but like Roger Goodell saying that part at the end where he's like, you asked the same question last year. I don't know if your data's right or if it's wrong. I don't know if your data last year, like it was just a very Trumpian response at the end of that question, just like to completely diminish everything that he had just said by being like, yeah, I heard that some of your data was wrong last year. Like it was just very, very strange. Yeah. I don't know why he decided to answer this question that way.
Should be like, you have an ugly wife, just to cap it off. But no, but the data provided here was that 60 to 70% of the players are black. Are you disputing that? I don't know.
Or is he disputing that they haven't had someone on the news desk, or if they haven't had like that's not data? That's I don't know. It was insane.
Yeah, I just feel like, to your point, the forward-facing head of a company, a multi-billion-dollar corporation, should take on the thought process to listen. I think if anything has happened over the past few years in the country, it has been for people like you and me, Doug, to maybe shut up and listen once in a while. Yes. And Roger Goodell's response is instead to say, shut up, listen. Shut up, Jim Trotter, listen to me. But you're
the look on his face when he was like, can I answer your question? Yes.
Which, yeah. And it felt like a 3-hour long question Jim Trotter asked, but it was 80 seconds. 80 seconds of Goodell to calmly prepare, and instead he just got fired up and pissed. It was... I watch those every year, Doug. I've been at them. I've tried to ask questions at them unsuccessfully 3 different times.
Yeah.
He lies. He deceives. He gaslights. He corporate speaks his way through everything. One time he said it's more dangerous to sit on your couch than play in the NFL. With a straight face, he said that. He lied about when they tabulated PSI numbers across the league for a year and threw them all away because they proved that PSI numbers actually do change in the atmosphere. Scientists weren't lying about it. He just said, oh no, we didn't track that. He just lies at those things, but usually it's stupid football stuff maybe. When it's real stuff like concussions, player safety, or in this case, diversity and equity and inclusion within his own company from an employee, to respond that way is just insane. And if that was like another Fortune 500 company, it would be all over the news. But because he's a bozo and it's what he does, I don't know that anyone else wrote about it. I'm sure people did, but just in sports media, I should say.
If that had happened on like a Disney company call or something like that,
right?
like the shareholders meetings,
yes.
like not only like there'd probably be calls for him to be fired. Like I know, like maybe I'm overreacting to this a little bit, but like that response was just so bizarre to me, and I don't know. I mean, like you said, he gets away with it because like I don't know. Yeah, I always go back to
he's the shield. Yeah. I mean, everyone knows it. The owners love him because Doug Kyed and Mike Hurley sit here and bash Roger Goodell. We're not bashing the owners, but in this case, the owners didn't do anything wrong. No. In this case, it's Roger. It's the rare case where Roger could have handled it like a human and could have listened, but instead went into defensive attack mode, which is a bit insane given the nature of the subject and the topic at hand.
I always just go back to the fact that he just straight up lied about Tom Brady during the whole Deflategate thing, when Tom Brady was like freely admitting that he was talking to the ball boys more because Deflategate was going on, Jastrzemski, and then in whatever that was, the appeal that Roger Goodell hearing wrote or spoke at or whatever, he was like, oh yeah, Tom Brady was deceptive about talking more to John Jastrzemski. It was like just a complete and utter outright lie that he told about Tom Brady.
And so I'll tell you about that, Doug. So he said that when Brady was asked what he talked to Jastrzemski about, Brady exclusively said it was about preparing balls for the Super Bowl. And Goodell's line was, I did not find that credible. And then because of Judge Richard Berman in New York unsealing the transcript of the Tom Brady hearing, which to me changed the entire case. Everyone knows Mike Hurley, Deflategate guy. I was not what I was prior to the unsealing of Tom Brady's appeal hearing with Roger Goodell, which I've heard from a source in the room that Roger Goodell was falling asleep during, which multiple times Roger Goodell couldn't follow what was going on if you look at the transcript.
Right.
But once that came out, it became clear that Tom Brady did say, yeah, I talked to him about it. It was in the news. I was checking on him. I was seeing if he was okay. I said he'd be fine. We met. We talked about it. We did talk about the balls too. So there was an out-and-out lie. And then the NFL lawyer, Paul Clement, repeated that to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. And I was sitting there, and it didn't dawn on me till that night. I got home. It was like 1 a.m. I come home from New York, and I was like, holy crap, they lied to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals. So I wrote that, and then I remember the Washington Post. Is that where Sally Jenkins writes?
Yeah.
Coincidentally wrote it the next night. No source, no citation, but that's okay. Either way, they lied at that level of the court, and the court still ruled in his favor. So the man can get away with anything. You mentioned Donald Trump. Remember, he said he could walk down Fifth Avenue and shoot someone.
Yeah.
Roger Goodell is kind of at that level. The owners would be like, that person
he
posed a threat.
A lot of money.
It was a danger.
Yeah, so that might be enough. Oh, one last point on Roger Goodell, and this is not even worth talking about, but I just think it's funny that he was like, yeah, Russell Wilson called me up and said we should do flag football. So then they decided to do flag football for the Pro Bowl. And like this was just so similar to him saying like, yeah, Bill Polian told me that overtime should be shorter. So that's why we shortened overtime. Like, if anyone prominent in Roger Goodell's life just calls him up and offers up an idea he's just going to take, like, that's not the way to lead a company. That's insane. That's bizarre. You shouldn't just be listening to Russell Wilson about things.
You shouldn't be listening to Russell Wilson about most things, I would say. But let that be a lesson to anyone with influence. Like Tony Dungy should call him up and be like, you should give me $50 million. And maybe Roger would be like, that's a great idea.
I don't know. It's just very bizarre that Roger Goodell just offers up this information that like one person told him that doing something would be a good idea, and then he just blindly follows them.
And your last point on Roger was, that officiating is at an all-time high.
Yes.
It's never been better. I just think you have a guy in Walt Anderson running the show. Walt Anderson in 17, 18 was so bad that the NFL actually came out and said, yeah, he screwed up and shouldn't have done that. Walt Anderson was in charge of the replay room that didn't review. Was it Isaiah McKenzie, whoever on the Bills this year clearly didn't catch it in that Vikings game. They should have stopped the game. They didn't. They should have stopped the Devontae Smith play in Philadelphia. You talk about gaslighting. He was asked about the third down replay in Kansas City. When they replayed it down, he's like, that's pretty common. It happens quite a bit. Nobody in the history of the sport has said they've seen that before, let alone on a championship game level. And Rodgers just like, yeah, that happens a lot. So, I mean, again, that's more like the football stuff that you and I and people like us deal with. But my God, man, it's surviving those things. You don't drink. This is why I drink. The Roger Goodell press conference every year.
All right, let's talk a little bit about the Super Bowl. I think that we're on different sides of the coin here. I think that you believe that the Eagles are going to win.
Yep. Heads.
I'm tails. Tails never fails. And I believe that the Chiefs are going to win. And my case for this is that in most data, the Chiefs and the Eagles are pretty close. Like, Eagles have a better running game. Eagles have a better overall defense. Eagles pass defense is better. Chiefs run defense is better. Haven't really taken a close look at special teams. But I'm a big Jalen Hurts guy. I like Jalen Hurts a lot. Patrick Mahomes is so significantly better than any other quarterback in the NFL. So like he's the difference. He's the difference in this game. And
you're right.
I think that the rest of the teams are pretty similar. Like the Chiefs have a good offensive line. Chiefs wide receivers this year were way better than I expected them to be. They've got the best tight end in the NFL. They've got a good defense. But then you've got Patrick Mahomes, and I think that I don't know. It's a very simplistic way of looking at this game, but he is significantly better than Jalen Hurts. And the Eagles
I don't
haven't played
disagree.
anyone.
Well, they played some teams along the way. Played 17 games, but I get you. I'm with you because I do believe the Eagles win. I think they're a better team. I think they've whooped ass all year. That's what they spent the year doing. But when they do put the quarterback comparison on the screen, I'm like, I don't know about that. But I'll tell you what, Doug, because I accidentally published my pick tonight instead of tomorrow morning, which is fine. Give the people what they want.
Yep.
The red zone is a significant factor. Do you know the Chiefs rank in red zone defense? I'm just trying to find it because I wasn't prepared as necessary. Let me see here. Give me a second. Yeah. They allowed touchdowns on 67% of opponents' red zone trips, which was 31st in the NFL. Now, the other side of that, the Eagles had the third best red zone offense. They also had the fifth best running game, and they had the fourth best third down conversion percentage, and they were, I think, third and fourth down conversion percentage. So my point is, if they can run the ball, convert their third downs, convert a couple fourth downs, get to the red zone and score, which also the Chiefs ranked 32nd in pass touchdowns allowed, which is dead last if you're not good at counting. Anyone out there, I struggle with it myself, so I want to help. So I just think all those things combined, and if you can get one pick on Patrick Mahomes and thus prevent the number one offense from scoring on one of their drives while playing good defense, I think the Eagles have the third overall or eighth overall, third in yards, 8 in points. Yeah. They can win, but man, if anything goes wrong for the Eagles, whether it be a fumble, whether it be a muffed punt, whether it be, I don't know, a special teams touchdown the other way, it will go to the Chiefs. It is a delicate thing, but I don't think the Eagles are going to win 40-7. But I do think if the Eagles play their game, which they're capable of, they're going to win maybe like 30-24.
Chiefs secondary scares me a little bit. They lost Travarius Ward, which wasn't great. They lost Mike Hughes, which was a little bit less great, or was a little bit better. I don't know where I'm going with that. But I don't know. Like, this isn't a game that the Eagles can just like put away with their running game, I don't think. And that's what they like to do. Jalen Hurts is a cheat code on third and fourth down, which is a big factor in that. He had a ton of designed runs this season, but a lot of those designed runs were just QB sneaks because what do you have, like 14 rushing touchdowns, something like that this season. And those were primarily
13
QB sneaks.
13.
And yeah, he, for how many times he rushed the ball this season, I think only like 30% of them or something like that were scrambles. So it was a ton of design runs on his, Patrick Mahomes, I think, had almost as many scrambles this season as Jalen Hurts, which is kind of weird because he probably ran the ball like a third as many times. I don't know, though. Like, the Chiefs are they're going to come back no matter what the deficit is. You can't put the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands with 30 seconds left, down 7 points, and expect to not go to overtime. The Eagles' defense has been great, but it's also just, I don't know how much this matters, and it's not an analytical way of looking at this, but their path to the playoffs, they lost 2 of 3 to finish off the season. Granted, two of those were with Gardner Minshew at quarterback. But then once they get to the playoffs, they had to beat a Giants team, which was one of the worst playoff teams to have won a playoff game, maybe in the last 20 to 30 years, something like that.
Let me interject.
And then a 49ers team that didn't have a quarterback.
But with the Giants, I know they weren't great. They had no championship chance. But they were the toughest team to put away this year. They were,
right.
I think they finished 13-4 against the spread or something. They never got blown out. They were tough as balls. They had a great head coach, and they got whooped in that game. What was it, 38-7?
Yeah.
So I think that's where you can look at that. And I guess the championship game is sort of, you can't really look at that for much. So I'll give you that one. But I just think the fact that they trashed the Giants does stick out to me. I think there's 2 things that will probably happen and will make everyone go crazy. One, the dots, the NFL Next Gen dots. Yeah. There's been at least one time, maybe 2 this year, where you could see the dots just sort of separate on a designed run for Jalen Hurts, like between the guard and tackle. And there's no safety, there's no linebacker, and it's just an 80-yard touchdown. And it's like, great job, everybody. So that might happen. And Travis Kelce running through a zone, running a little maybe 15 to 20-yard hook, and just having endless amounts of space around him as Patrick Mahomes casually flicks a ball to him, and then he catches it and runs for 30 more yards. That's going to happen too. I don't care what defense you're playing. If you're in zone, put a man on Travis Kelce to at least try to follow him around, because I'm sick of seeing Travis Kelce run into these, like, the biggest openings in zones I've ever seen him. He was asked about it this week. How are you always wide open? And he was like, Andy Reid, baby. And it's like, no, damn it. It's everyone being stupid. Just please, a little heads up when the best receiving threat they have, put a guy on him. Just keep some eyeballs on him. That's all.
One last point on Patrick Mahomes. I think the throws are getting a little too cute. I don't think he needs to underhand the ball as often as he does. I think that sometimes the amount of touch he puts on a ball is a little bit too much, just because he wants to do it a little bit too fancy. I think mixing in some overhand throws would help sometimes.
Yeah. Well, he fumbled that one in the championship game, so you got to be watch out for that.
Absolutely. We have 2 more notes in here, I believe. One of them is, did you know the Brian Kinchen story that came out on NFL Films today, Twitter, and I did not know that entire story.
Me neither.
And it was wild.
Yeah.
I also didn't know that Brian Kinchen had been a tight end at Cleveland before he transitioned.
Well, long snapper's got to do something, right? He had not many catches, but
he had 1,000 yards or something in his career.
Oh wow. All right, good for him. Yeah, he looked like a football player. The 30-second version. Well, first of all, go to NFL Films Twitter and watch it, because it was rarely, I will say rarely, do I see an 8-minute video on Twitter and watch it. And I watched that whole damn thing. It was great. It was basically Lonnie Paxton got hurt, and then they hired a long snapper named Sean McDermott, but not that one. He got hurt after one game. Great job. Thanks for coming. And Bill Belichick and Scott Pioli were like, what about Kinchen? Because he was their long snapper in Cleveland.
He'd been out of the league for 3 years.
Time. So it was 2003, and he hadn't played since 2000. He came out of his 7th grade teaching job and joined the Patriots, played a couple games in the regular season, and then they had that freezing cold game against Tennessee, and he skipped skipped a snap to Ken Walter, who fielded it and got a punt off. Had a high one in the AFC Championship game on a field goal, which was fielded, and the kick was good. Remember, that was a game where Hunter Smith was punting for the first time in 6 weeks for the Colts, and the snap went straight over his head. That was hilarious. But then the Super Bowl week, he wanted to quit. He wanted to go home. He had some bad. He bounced 2 snaps. He said he never put a ball on the ground in 13 years.
Basically,
he did it 4 times. Yeah, he got the yips, and it came down to the field goal. You know what happened? I just think it was a really cool.
Well, he also cut his hand hours before the Super Bowl. Yeah.
Well, the way I will say this, I will criticize NFL Films for this. They said then he cut himself, and I'm like, oh, geez,
no. I was like, purpose.
That
went dark.
Yeah, I didn't know what the hell this story was going to turn. But he cut himself with a knife cutting a bread roll or something. And I'll criticize NFL Films. They used the lineman eating KFC clearly in the after practice video from Foxborough.
Right.
It was not a pregame meal. I know they don't have that footage, but I don't know. Maybe do a dramatic reenactment.
I was like, what was he, cutting a fried chicken breast? With a plastic fork? In my mind, it was a plastic fork that he was using on KFC. In my head, that's how it looked.
Either way, he said he put 0 balls on the ground in 13 years, and then he put 4. He bounced 4 snaps in that playoffs. But I think it's just a cool story because I've watched all the DVDs, read all the books, the magazines, and all that stuff. I vaguely remember it being sort of a point of contention that night because Vinatieri missed one and had one blocked. So when he went up for the winning kick, it was sort of on your mind. But the whole story, definitely didn't know it. There was an SI article a few years ago, and there's a book about him, but missed those too. So if you want 8 minutes instead of a book, then you can go read the book.
Absolutely. And you continue to be shadow banned on Twitter. Is that true?
Oh, well, one more thing. I don't talk about dreams very much, but I want I want this on record in case it happens. I had a dream. The Super Bowl was at Arrowhead. GEHA Field at Arrowhead. And the Eagles were down 5 with 4 minutes left at like the 35-yard line, 3rd and 9. And then Joe Mixon, famous Philadelphia Eagle, of course, runs down to the 5-yard line. I think I had something in my head from the AFC Championship game. So Mixon gets them to 1st and goal, right? They run a play, get stuffed, and then on 2nd down, they kick a field goal. Philadelphia was. And the thought is, you kick it now, you stop them, then you kick the field goal to win, rather than score the touchdown and let the Chiefs score the game-winning field goal with a few minutes left. And it was like analytics gone wild. Twitter was going crazy. I tweeted in my dream. I said, "Mr. Sirianni, sir." Great tweet. I'm gonna save that one. And then I went downstairs to the pool. I don't know where I was in my dream to watch the end. And everyone had just filed out of Arrowhead Stadium. The Chiefs had won. I don't know what happened. So just be aware of Sirianni making a very analytical decision, whether it's, I don't think he'll kick a field goal down 5 from the 5-yard line.
Down 5, you got to kick the field goal. You got to do it.
But I figured it out.
Got to have confidence in your defense.
So my brain, while sleeping, figured out you kick it, you stop them, and you just need a field goal to win. And you can get a field goal. Everyone gets the field goal to win. Yeah. You don't want to give that opportunity because if you score a touchdown, you only have 2 or 3.
Right.
I think so. Just be aware of that. That could happen. And then the update on the shadow ban. Elon Musk thought he was getting shadow banned too. So it's not just me. And people told him his like popularity rating is down, his interest, and the people that told him that got fired. You can read that story on the internet.
Wow. Well. Jeez.
Before we go, Doug, we go, because I didn't know NFL Honors is happening tonight.
Oh, yeah.
So we got to put our predictions down. So when people listen to this after the fact, they're like, those guys are geniuses. All right. MVP.
Patrick Mahomes.
I'm going to go with Mahomes as well. Player of the year. Nick Bosa, Chris Jones, or Micah Parsons?
Before the season, I said Parsons, but I think it's going to be Bosa.
All right. I'm going Parsons. Offensive player of the year. Hill, Hurts, Jefferson, Mahomes.
Hill, Hurts, Jefferson, Mahomes. Jefferson?
I got Jefferson on that one, too. Yeah. Though Tyreek Hill quietly had 1,700 yards this year. Pretty impressive. How
weird would it be if Hurts won Offensive Player of the Year and Mahomes was MVP?
Yeah. No, that can't happen. Well, he did rush. I don't know. Whatever. Yeah. Offensive Rookie of the Year. Brock Purdy, Kenneth Walker, Garrett Wilson.
Wilson.
Me too. Defensive Rookie of the Year. Sauce Gardner, Aiden Hutchinson, Tariq Woolen. That's a good one.
This one's really tough.
That's a good one.
I kind of feel like they're going to give it to Sauce, and he probably deserves it.
Yeah, maybe Hutchinson. I'll go Hutchinson just to be different, but I think Sauce gets it too. Comeback Player of the Year. Saquon, Christian McCaffrey, Geno. Tough one too.
Who was the first one? Saquon? Geno.
Saquon.
I'll go Geno.
See, I think it's Geno. It just depends. Do they go injury or do they go being irrelevant? Because I think Saquon might get more votes on the injury factor, so I'll go Saquon. Coach of the Year. They actually narrowed this to 3. Daboll, Peterson, and Shanahan, I believe. I think Sirianni and McDermott have already were immediately ruled out.
Like Sirianni should win this award, right?
Yeah, the biggest turnaround, the best team in the he checks the boxes.
Yeah,
and hasn't won it before. Like it's bing bang boom.
Does not make any sense.
So if they didn't eliminate him already, I would have picked Sirianni. But
I would have too.
I'll go Daboll because that was a great turnaround as well.
I'm gonna go Daboll as well.
There's no wrong pick too.
The case for Peterson and Daboll is pretty much the same. Yes. Shanahan, I guess. I don't know. He probably has he ever won before? I don't think he. Coach of the Year is so probably stupid not. Because it feels like half the time whoever wins gets fired 3 years later anyway. It's just like it's a dumb award. It hasn't what's his name? Hasn't Ron Rivera won it like more than Belichick or something?
Yeah, the funniest one though, I wanted to. Mike Smith won in 2008. Which is a pretty good. But there was one that was so funny where Belichick obviously had Matt Nagy, 2018 Coach of the Year, So there you go. All right, we have one more, and that is assistant coach of the year, Doug, which I have not done my homework on.
Good Lord.
Ben Johnson, Lions OC, D'Amico Ryans, 49ers DC, and Shane, what did Gronk call Shane Steichen? Shane Spikeman. Shane Spikeman. I'm going to go with not the Lions OC. That's a fun one, though, because the Lions had a good season offense. I guess D'Amico, because he got all the offseason publicity. So D'Amico Ryans, 49ers.
My initial thought was Ben Johnson, just because I don't know. He's just I think that everyone wants to like Ben Johnson, but I'll go with D'Amico. That's a really tough one, though. That's you're kind of getting into the weeds on that one, I feel like.
I know. I mean, it's hard enough to judge head coaches in an award situation. That's why whenever anybody says Dante Scarnecchia, Hall of Famer, best offensive line coach ever, I'm like, yeah, very possibly. But what are we measuring that? What is the criteria to even say that? I sure. All right, but
it's also
maybe not.
It's so locally based. I'm sure that someone in Atlanta thinks that they've got the best linebackers coach in NFL. It's I don't know. Yeah. It's Dante Scarnecchia, obviously, but there's a lot of good offensive line coaches throughout the NFL. I don't know. Yeah, it's. I don't want to be.
Patricia.
This is not a Dante Scarnecchia podcast.
No, you get my point. Everyone gets my point. No, that was fun. I like the rapid, unplanned. We should do award picks every week like that.
Okay, we'll create awards every week and then pick them. All right. Well, this podcast has gone on. This is a record, I think, which is, I guess it makes sense. It's Super Bowl.
Super Bowl.
This is our own Radio Row right here. Just me,
That's right.
You and I. But yeah, leave us a review, rate, review, subscribe, follow us on Twitter. You know where to find us, and we'll talk to you guys on Sunday after the Super Bowl, right?
Right. Super Bowl Sunday.
Bye. Goodbye. Bye. 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 Bye.